Good afternoon, everybody. It's another Move TV, and I'm here today with Tom Phillips. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Graham. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Are you warm enough, sir? Let's check in first. Health and safety. Are you warm enough? Do you have something to drink?
Well, I didn't bring the drink with me, but I think I'm pretty well hydrated and very, very warm too. So yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad that the heating's on, and you can afford that. Unlike some parts of the nation.
I have the top apartments in the building, so everybody's heat rises up and keeps me warm.
What a genius idea. Why didn't we all think of that? Just live on the top of a building and get everyone else to pay for your own heating. Brilliant. Brilliant, Tom. Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself. So what is it that you do?
Okay, so I've basically two sides to the business. The main business is corporate training. We specialize in leadership and management training. That can be anything from a one-day training program through to the longest we did was a 2-year leadership program up in Scotland with pharmacists.
Wow.
Tend to do most of my work with the pharmaceutical industry and the NHS because my background is pharmaceuticals. Also get to travel a lot of the world doing that as well, which is pretty good. But the reason I joined Move, because the other side of the business that I've been developing for the last couple of years is I'm also a qualified clinical hypnotherapist. So I've always been interested in the way the mind works. I've always been fascinated by conscious, subconscious, how we make decisions, how we do things. So many years ago, I got introduced to this thing called NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. Went down that route quite extensively, still do a lot of NLP training. And the hypnosis sits quite nicely with that. They're very complementary. They're kind of good tools to have in your toolbox. But I did the hypnosis purely out of interest. I got invited onto a course with a friend of mine. She was also my coach at the time. She runs hypnotherapy training. She's probably one of the top trainers, one of the top hypnotherapists in the UK. So I said, yep, I'll come on the course. Got fascinated by it. Did my foundation, which took a year, then did another 2 years to get qualified, get my diploma. And then, of course, as soon as everybody knew that I was qualified as a clinical hypnotherapist, there was the usual request, so can you help me stop smoking? Can you help me lose weight? I'm a little bit stressed out. I'm not sleeping properly. So I started helping people and kind of thought, you know what, I'm doing a lot of this. I may as well make some money out of it. So I now have a practice in Rodney Street in Liverpool, which is kind of the right place to be if you're going to do this kind of thing. It's like the Scouse equivalent of Harley Street, if you like.
Sure.
I prefer to see people physically, but we can work online as well. So my kind of long-term plan is keep doing the corporate stuff for another 5 years, get to a point where hopefully I can sell that business and just kind of slide into retirement with the hypnotherapy, maybe do 2 or 3 days a week, seeing people, helping people. And that's where it's kind of come from. But it's really, personally, I enjoy it as well because it's great when you can help people. And usually within the first session, when people come to see me, whatever, they're normally feeling a lot better by the end of it. I have a slightly different model to most therapists. I only work with people for 6 weeks because I'm fairly confident. Usually around about week 3, they're in a much better place. I have had many clients who, we get to week 4 and they're like, "What are we going to talk about?" So I don't like to work with people longer than that. A couple of reasons for that is that, why prolong the agony? There are a lot of counselors, a lot of therapists out there who will say, you got to keep coming back every week for the next 12 years or something. And it just doesn't make sense. Why not get to the root of it as quickly as possible? Saves time, saves money, and it stops people from suffering. The analogy I always use is if you took your car to a mechanic and the mechanic said, "Oh yeah, I need to see your car once a week for the next 6 months," you wouldn't be impressed, would you?
Well, that is what my mechanic said.
Yeah, I think I know him.
Yeah. No, my mechanic's really good actually, but I have been to some mechanics in the past that have been like that. I think there's the same in every profession. And let's talk about the hypnosis thing because actually, I think that I worked last year with someone that was a clinical hypnotist, but also has a therapy-based business as well. And it struck me that at the time that hypnosis has kind of gone through a kind of curve, if you like, because growing up as a child in the 70s, hypnosis appeared everywhere on TV as kind of this variety act with people doing silly things up on stages, etc. And it was all that, but actually, it's kind of come back. I don't want to call it a renaissance, but it's actually kind of come back into a more clinical realm.
It's definitely a growing area. I think it's a growing market, as are I think a lot of different alternative therapies. So things like tapping, EFT, EMDR, all these kind of things are growing because I think people are willing to explore stuff outside of the norm, shall we say. I think, unfortunately, sadly, at the moment, and this has been the case for many years, mental health is the poor relation of the NHS. So if you want to go and get help for a particular mental challenge that you're facing, whether it's stress, anxiety, smoking cessation, weight loss, or whatever, you'd be lucky if you can get an appointment within 6 months through the NHS. So I think it's definitely growing. It's definitely a market that more and more people are taking advantage of and looking into. And I think the big distinction to make as well is that you've got hypnosis, which is kind of what you were talking about, which is your stage hypnotist, but you've also clinical hypnosis, which is kind of what people like myself do. Anybody can set themselves up and say they're a hypnotist if they want to. To be a clinical hypnotherapist, you need to be trained, you need to be registered, you've got to be properly insured and all the rest of it. And the thing about, hypnosis in general, you cannot be hypnotized to do anything you don't want to do. Your subconscious will always protect you. There's this common misconception that a hypnotist can just put you under like that. And some people are definitely more susceptible. But ultimately, once you're under, you cannot be hypnotized to anything you don't want to do. So when you see those people in pubs or clubs or whatever going on stage and standing on one leg and clucking like a chicken, they are normally the kind of people that are quite happy to do that anyway. So their subconscious doesn't perceive it as a threat. So they go down that route. Those well-trained stage hypnotists, they're really good at scanning the audience and spotting the people who are more likely to go under very quickly. So they will screen the audience to get people up on stage, and that's kind of how it works. But I usually spend a certain amount of time in my first session with anybody explaining to them what clinical hypnosis is. You're not asleep, you're not unconscious, you're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. You're just in a much more relaxed state, and when you're in that relaxed state, it's a lot easier to tap into your subconscious. And that's where so much stuff goes on that that's kind of where we start to find out where the problem sits, and we can undo that. I always say it's a bit like a computer. We run programs all of the time. Sometimes those programs are helpful. So you have programs for happiness, relaxation, enjoyment, all those kind of things. But you also run the more unproductive programs like stress, anxiety, phobias, PTSD. If you can identify where those programs are, you can change them, just like you would do with a computer. You change the program or you delete it if you knew that it was causing problems. So that's the kind of analogy I always use.
Is there any correlation between the leadership stuff that you do and the hypnotherapy?
There's a big overlap, because a lot of what we do in leadership training is all about mindset. And it's having the confidence, the belief to be a really good leader. There are certain core skills that you can take on board that make you a good leader. But above and beyond that, it's definitely about your mindset. I do a lot of business coaching, and I'm coaching a lot of C-suite execs at the moment. There's a massive amount of imposter syndrome around for whatever reason. Not sure where it's come from, but that is very much a mindset thing, because people have usually got the ability. For whatever reason, they're doubting themselves. So there's a big overlap into kind of leadership, and we do a lot of work with salespeople as well. And it's the same thing there. It's having those beliefs, having the confidence, being able to kind of push on, and particularly with everything that's going on in the world at the moment and the way the economy is, definitely a huge amount that revolves around mindset.
It's interesting you say that about imposter syndrome at that level. I think some of it may be to do with how business is being carried out at the moment. I mean, we're seeing people dissipated outside of offices and outside of that structure. I mean, if you think about it, as we enter a world of hybrid, then there's a whole infrastructure there, physical infrastructure, that's been lost. And managing remotely, if you like, or managing when your workforce is there is more difficult, because, and I think part of it is the fact that you haven't actually got your other leaders around you necessarily, so you can't sort of turn to your other leader next to you to say, what do you think, etc. You're having to read people online all of the time, and that's quite difficult for a lot of people, I think.
It's huge. You know, the world has changed. We've been through such a massive upheaval in the last couple of years with the way that we work, and certainly, you know, virtual working, there's a lot of pros to it. You know, I can see why people kind of want to do it now rather than going back into physical offices. But there are also a lot of cons, and you're right, you know, that remoteness, the isolation, a lot of people are feeling that's a huge challenge for people mentally, and even the toughest, most resilient people mentally have struggled over the last couple of years. I know I did. I hated the isolation, you know, and I'm because I was such a gregarious creature, I want to be out amongst it. That has caused, you know, massive challenges. And then you're right, you know, when you're out in an office with somebody, or you know, working in sales, if you're out on a visit with somebody, you're going with a rep to watch them visit their customers. There's so much physical interaction, and there's an energy between people, you know, whether that's 2 people in an office or, you know, 30 people on a training course. There's a definite energy that you do not get online. And being able to read people online is a big skill. It's a big challenge. You know, whenever we do like basic communication skills for leaders and managers, we always talk about a guy called Albert Moravian. He was the forefather of research into human communication. He was the first person that's credited with coming up with this idea of verbal and non-verbal communication.
Yep.
And he said that, you know, communication breaks down into 3 elements. You've got the words that you use, the tone of voice that you use, the body language that you display. Words only account for 7% of the communication that's taking place. Tone is 38%. The big one is body language. So when you're sat on a screen like this and you can only see, you know, the top half of somebody, you're losing probably 75% of that 55%. So it is really challenging to read people. And clearly in a situation like this, there's no energy being transferred. You know, if I was in a room with you and you had a really bad day, I could probably pick up on that.
Yeah.
But on screen, you know, I've got very little to go on unless you tell me and just say, oh, you know what, Tom, I've had a crap day and I want to talk about it.
Yeah. And not only that, but, you know, people can play into it. They can act into it as well.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's really interesting, actually, the figures around management and trust with people turning the screen off in meetings is huge. I mean, you know, there's something like 95% of managers said that they distrust anybody that turns the camera off during the meeting, whatever reason that may be. And the trouble is, it may just be that person feels quite is an introvert and just really feels quite uncomfortable being seen on screen. It's not a natural thing for a lot of people to be on screen. And I find it with the work that I do, you know, you meet people and they go, you have a chat with them beforehand, before an interview or whatever, and they're come over quite confident, they talk nicely about their business. And some people, as soon as they know that the camera's on or the clock's ticking, they just freeze. You know, and it's very, very difficult. But we're putting people under huge strains that they've never been through before. And do you think one of the issues as well is that there are a lot of accidental managers out there? And I've talked about this before on this on Move TV, but we're seeing a lot of people made managers that have never had any training to be managers.
It's a huge challenge. You know, I've seen this in lots of organizations. Classically in pharma, you get somebody who's really good in selling or good at sales, and the company goes, right, we'll promote them. And they haven't got the skills, because you're right, they haven't been trained. But B, they've got no desire. It's a job they never wanted to do. They were quite happy as salespeople. See this a lot in the NHS, unfortunately. So, you know, the kind of the top of the tree within the NHS is a consultant. Unless you go down the academic route, then you become a professor. But you get into a consultant position and you go from being a registrar to a consultant. You've been a registrar for anywhere between 5 and 9 years. The big change when you step into that consultant seat is not your clinical skills, because you're still seeing the same kind of patients with the same diseases. It's the leadership skills. You know, you've never managed people before. You've never managed a team. You've never had to manage a budget or, you know, a project or anything like that. So yeah, there's a lot of accidental managers. I like that term. It seems to be very, very in vogue at the moment. So yeah, people who are there who, some of them want to be there, but they've not had the skills or they've not had the training. And some people don't want to be there. You know, it's an absolute nightmare for them to be put in a management position.
So where's the starting point for you? If someone was interested, let's get our management trained. Where's the starting point?
Well, they need to speak to us. I mean, we like to think, and I think we pretty much do this, that everything we do for a company is bespoke. So we want to sit down and understand their needs. Where's the gap? So we would typically do a gap analysis and say, right, where are you with your leadership and management function at the moment? Where do you want to be a year from now or 5 years from now, and what's going to get you there? So what's going to be the most impactful kind of training that you can do? So, for example, with the NHS at the moment, we are doing a hell of a lot of training on the business side of the NHS, if you like. So we're doing a lot of training on how to write a business proposal, because again, if you're a consultant, you need more money, or you need more staff, or you need new facilities, you've got to be able to justify that. Then we do a lot of training on project management, because assuming that you get the go ahead for whatever resource you've just asked for, you've then got a project to manage. So those kind of things are really, really common within the NHS. And then within pharma, I mean, it can be anything, just depends on the type of organization, the size of organization. We work with some of the big players like GSK, right down to very, very small pharma companies that you'll have never even heard of, who have maybe like 6 salespeople covering the whole of the country. And it's very much, what do they need at the time to have the biggest impact in the shortest period of time in terms of their leadership and management skills.
That's interesting. Thank you. Now, listen, you said right at the beginning about the fact that you came into Move because of your own private practice, etc. But what was it about Move that drew you to it as a community?
I'd been in another group with Mr. Waldron. You might have heard of him. Oh, excuse me. Let me turn that off.
There he is now.
Yeah, he's just picked me up here. And so, I knew that he'd kind of set up Move, and I was kind of watching it from afar for a little bit, and I thought, yeah, that looks really, really interesting. So joined up, and I think that was nearly 2 years ago now. Went into the elite group, which is obviously the Tuesday 10 o'clock. We are the best of Move. I always say that. Yeah, that's probably why nobody ever speaks to me when we go to the socials. But yeah, that was it. I've met some great characters. I've had loads of business come my way as well, so people referring people on to me, which has been fantastic for the hypnotherapy side, and a couple of leads as well on the leadership and management side as well. And I really like the way Move works. I've been in other networking groups. There's always a certain amount of pressure to bring business in, to bring people in, and you just don't get that Move. We had our meeting this morning, 10 o'clock, and it's just great to kind of talk to people. Hear about what's going on in their world, being able to offer advice and suggestions if you feel like you can contribute, and then getting that advice and getting suggestions as well if you feel like you need it. And you've got such a great mix of people as well, from so many different backgrounds, so many different industries. Some of them are right at the start of their kind of entrepreneurial career, if you like, and some are really well established. So I love the mix of people that you get, and the way the meetings, I mean, from one week to the next, no meetings are ever the same. I really like that variety.
Yeah. Is there a kind of person you'd like to see coming into Elite that's not in there at the moment?
For me, if I put my corporate head on, it would be anybody that's in HR or occupational developments, because they're great for the training side of things. The hypnotherapy side of things is a little bit difficult. So I don't want to say, let's get loads of people in who are stressed, because then I've got clients to go after. But I think it'd probably be maybe allied kind of specialty therapy areas, if you like. So it'd be great to get some Reiki practitioners in, or tapping specialists in, those kind of things, just to kind of be able to discuss stuff with them. Because again, I do network with a lot of people from different therapy areas who've got their own businesses, and it's always great to get different insights, because there's always little bits of other approaches to mental health that really fascinate me, and I think, I can steal that, I can borrow that, I can use that in my sessions as well.
It strikes me that that's probably similar to the world that I've come from as well, because I was in workplace assessments, etc., for about 20 odd years, and one of the things that I've built with some of the things that I've been doing since I've come out of that profession and into social media are pieces of content and areas where I can bring different experts that have kind of parallels, but don't necessarily tread on each other's toes together. Because I think actually for the end users, if you like, that's really necessary. And I think it's something that's been a problem, is people working in silos up until now.
I think that's massive. And again, because I've got such a great connection, because I've been trained by some of the best people in the country and possibly the world. I have no hesitation in referring people. So particularly for things like addiction, somebody comes to me and says, look, got a problem with addiction, or I know someone's got a problem with addiction. The first thing I do is refer them on to a lady in Birmingham, because she is basically the addiction queen, for want of a better word. And if she can't help you, then you probably are in a really bad place. And then certain of the types of things as well, I know a lot of great therapists who work with kids, so I'd have no hesitation in referring them on as well. And I think it's great when you've got that kind of network where you can refer people, and kind of knowing your limits as well, knowing what you're kind of good at, and what you need to kind of move or pass on as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think signposting is a really important thing, but to be able to signpost, you need to know enough about a subject, don't you, in order to be able to do that. And that's where I think sometimes professionals fall down. They don't necessarily, they stick to their lane, but never look outside of their lane in terms of what other people are doing. I've always found it fascinating to open my eyes a little bit and even do some qualifications in other areas, not necessarily to take that route, but just to be able to go, and actually this is where we need to go with this now, because I generally believe that people that are really good at helping people are people that care. And if you really care, you want a holistic solution for somebody. You don't want to see your solution as the be all and end all of it.
100%. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you today.
Thank you very much.
Tom, thanks for coming on Move TV. We'll have more Move TV very soon, so keep tuned. The next person we're going to have on is Scott. You're going to have to tune in to find out about Scott and what he does. So until next time, thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.